Hey everybody, welcome back to Retro Modding News. There's a ton of stories to go over this week, so let's just get started. First up, we have another PS1 Mr. Core update from Asm FPG. It looks like with the help of Laxer 3A, he was able to get an interesting widescreen feature to work. They've created a switchable option that allows you to play the game in widescreen. I was looking at the comments and Shane Lynch asked if the sprite layer was stretched and everything else was the correct aspect ratio, and it sounds like that's correct. So you look here and you can see the HUD elements are kind of stretched a little bit, as you might expect if you transfer something from 4:3 to 16:9 aspect ratio, but the game in the background has the correct aspect ratio. That's a pretty cool feature, and I wonder how many different games this works with, or maybe it just works with every game. Oh, it says right here, not all games will like it. Not every game is going to respect the widescreen, but you could try it. So if you're using the PS1 Mr. Core, you can look forward to this feature probably coming soon. Next, we have this picture from Retro Game Restore showing off something from Retro Daily 1. It's this little flex cable that can bridge the two boards from a Neo Geo MVS MV1B. If you're already familiar with the MVS MV1C, that is kind of the top loading version of the Neo Geo. The MV1B is sort of a front loading style, but using this flex cable you can flatten it out and make it look more like a MV1C. And I know this is an old tweet, but it's kind of relevant. Brian Hargrove showed a kind of ultra compact MVS using an MV1B board kind of folded on top of itself. So you could totally get away with something like this if you use this flex cable up here. This is really interesting. Who knows what we're going to see now? Maybe ultra compact OMVS builds, or maybe just using the original OMVS instead of using the MV1C, using an MV1B instead. Next, we have this picture of a resin 3D printer printed NES shell. If you go here to this link, there are actually STL files where you can print every part of an original NES frontloader shell. Unfortunately, the footprint of the NES doesn't easily print in a lot of the cheaper 3D printers. Like I have an Ender 3 and the NES shell here would not fit on that build plate. But it's still pretty great if you have a large enough 3D printer, you can just print a brand new NES shell. You can do all sorts of crazy colors too with 3D printing filament, so I'd be really excited to see someone print a clear-ish red NES shell. That way it might match my EverDrive. Speaking of 3D printed case shells, Avram CE here is showing off the OMVS Lite. I think I had seen this a long while ago. The OMVS is a kit that you can buy that converts the Neo Geo MV1C arcade board into a console that you can use with an upscaler. Anyways, the original shell for the OMVS will not fit again on a normal size build plate in a 3D printer. So the OMVS Lite is a case that's designed to be broken apart. You can see here there's the different pieces that screw together and built on a smaller 3D printer. Looks like the top and the bottom are acrylic, so you basically sandwich those 3D printed parts in between two pieces of acrylic. I think it's a pretty cool design if you're interested in 3D printing your own cases, or maybe you don't want to order something more expensive like the Laser Bear 3D printed case. You'll be able to print your own. However, later on he posted an update saying that he isn't really happy with the design because when you put the case together, the case kind of warps a little bit. I actually noticed that too with my original OMVS build that I built myself. The case kind of flexes a little bit, but Humble Bazooka here in the comments said that it might actually be the MVS board itself and not necessarily the case design. Anyways, we'll have to see what happens if he's unhappy with this design and redesigns it a little bit to make it a little more stable. Either way, I'm excited to see where this project goes. Next, we have a little teaser from PixelFX showing off the OSD from the PixelFX Morph. The Morph is an in-development upscaler from PixelFX, and we haven't really seen much in terms of physical pictures of one actually working. It looks like there's a list of input types. We have composite video over green, so composite sync on green. Composite video over HSync, is that VGA? Or VGA is down there. Or maybe that's just two different inputs, like green is in the component input for green, not sure. S video, component, RGB C-Sync, both TTL sync and 75 ohm sync, RGSB, which is sync on green, VGA, and HDMI input. Actually, and in this picture, you can see a Game Boy Advance consolizer, but I wonder if that's a little teaser showing that they were testing the HDMI input with the Game Boy Advance consolizer. And I see a little Wi-Fi antenna. That means it'll probably have Wi-Fi updatable firmware. Let's see, the current outputting resolution is 1440 by 960, so 1440p? 240p to 1080p, but it's connected to a 1440p monitor. Anyways, really cool to see more information about the Morph. I am pretty excited about this scaler. Next up, we have some information from Reventlow about his N64 Junior case shells. Apparently, he was unhappy with the performance of the cases after a week-long burn-in test, basically trying to make the case as hot as possible during kind of typical usage to see if the PLA that the case is made out of would warp. In this particular case, he was using some kind of an HDMI mod here, which is in more direct direct contact with the bottom of the case. A couple of days later, he released another update saying that he would release 2 different versions of the N64 Junior case. One which is designed for more traditional, either like a stock N64 or with an RGB mod instead of a digital video mod, because at least most of the N64 RGB mods kind of go above the motherboard and not underneath it. Anyways, that first version would feature no additional cooling other than what the N64 had with stock, which should be fine for an RGB mod. But then he's going to have a second version, which is a Pro version, which is going to be made out of PETG, which is a little bit more heat resistant than the standard PLA. And it also has an additional cooling fan in the middle here. You could see this red console here has a fan in the middle. So this shows the differences between the Pro case, and the next one here is the more passively cooled normal case. He's probably going to be doing some more burn-in testing with this new version, so we'll have to see the results of that. Next, we have a post from Robert Dale Smith, who's showing off a USB to PC Engine adapter. And the reason this is significant is that 8BitDo has released a 2.4 gigahertz wireless controller for the PC Engine, but with a USB dongle and not one that actually fits a normal PC Engine console. But Robert felt the need to create at least a USB to PC Engine adapter so you can use that USB version of the 8BitDo controller on a real PC Engine. They've got pre-orders open, so if you are interested in this USB adapter for your PC Engine, you can go to this site and sign up for the pre-order. Speaking of USB controller adapters, Greg from LaserBear is showing off this LaserBit USB controller adapter. This kind of came from out of nowhere, and this first one here is a dual Sega Genesis to USB. Basically, you'll be able to use a wired Sega Genesis controller or a wireless one if you have one, with something probably like the Mister or with your PC. They are using the Damon Byte firmware, kind of like the triple controller, but there was this interesting conversation actually here between Sentient 6 and Greg asking if this was Damon Byte compatible, and Greg said that they didn't want to call this a Damon Byte adapter. Mick Guyver here, who I think is the creator of the Damon Byte original project, basically said that that is his company name. Damon Byte is his company name. Anyways, we'll have to keep in mind not to call everything a Damon Byte adapter because Damon Byte is the brand name for Mick Guyver. At the end of this tweet, Greg said that there's going to be a DB15 adapter coming soon, and actually a couple of days later, he tweeted some more pictures of some different PCBs. So we see a DB15, I guess that's going to be Neo Geo controller, as well as Super Nintendo. This will be pretty handy if you're looking to use real controllers with your Mister and you want a really tiny compact adapter. There's a pre-order for this LaserBit Sega Genesis adapter up on LaserBear's website now. Todd Gill kind of opened a can of worms with this next tweet. He was asking if anyone would be interested in a sub $200 Neo Geo Flashcart. I think the only available flashcarts are something like $350 and higher than that. This tweet got a bunch of likes. I think 461 is pretty high for this sort of thing. So it shows a lot of interest in a lower cost Neo Geo Flashcart. This kind of got Furtek talking about this though. Furtek has created some other Neo Geo products such as the Neo Geo CD SD loader. He actually tweeted his own thread about this topic. I'll try to summarize what Furtek was saying. Basically, if you ignore any costs it would take to develop something like that, you know, the time and money to lay out the PCB, program an FPGA, create a menu, and do testing, the actual cost of the physical hardware involved to create something like that would probably be higher than that amount. He specifically calls out King of Fighters 2003. Maybe that's just the largest Neo Geo game, but that's what you would have to develop the system to handle is the largest game. So TLDR, it's probably not going to happen unless a bunch of people donated their time to create a PCB layout and all the software involved for that sort of Neo Geo Flashcart. Interestingly, Voltar actually said if Furtek needed any help to give him a buzz. It definitely shows that there's interest in a product like this to create a lower cost but still high quality flashcart for the Neo Geo. Last but not least, we have the Console Mods Wiki. Alright, so first off, what is the Console Mods Wiki? So I know Bob from Retro RGB has been talking for a long time about a wiki where we can store sort of knowledge and technical information about different console mods in one central place. So the Console Mods Wiki was created by Durf here, who is one of the administrators, I think, for the PS3 Homebrew subreddit, the 360 Hack subreddit, and the original Xbox subreddit. Durf was not happy with the wikis that you can create inside of a subreddit, so they wanted to create this consolemods.org wiki to kind of replace the wikis from those three subreddits. So Durf, in partnership with Bob, and I'm sure a bunch of other people, I'm sorry if I don't know every specific person who's involved with this, created this Console Mods Wiki where we can store a bunch of technical information about older consoles and their mods. So let's just take a look at the front page of the Console Mods Wiki. you have a bunch of different systems broken down by manufacturer. So you have Xboxes at the top, Sega, there's a CRT wiki, a bunch of Nintendo consoles, Sony consoles, Atari, other stuff, handhelds. And you may notice that a bunch of these icons are actually grayed out. It looks like there's only a few that are not grayed out. If we actually hop into one of the categories, for example, Xbox, this will pull up a bunch of more categories underneath that console. And you'll notice that there's a bunch of bolded lists here which go to actual wiki articles. And you'll notice that there's only one here that's crossed off. If it's crossed off here, that means that they have an idea for a wiki, but just the wiki page is not yet created. So for each console, if more than half of the wiki pages have been filled out, that is when the console is going to switch from sort of grayed out to normal color. I wanted to get a little bit more familiar with the console mods wiki, so I actually dove into the NES console here, and there are a bazillion articles, but they're mostly grayed out. I'm a little bit familiar with the NES RGB and how to install it and a little bit about what it is, so I actually created this NES RGB wiki page. It's still a little bit of a work in progress. I don't have a ton of time to dedicate to creating this sort of article. I just gathered a bunch of information from Tim Worthington, who is the creator of the NES RGB's website, and kind of put it in here for people to see. So in a nutshell, this console mods wiki is pretty easy to navigate. You just pick the console that you want, and then you can dive into more topics about it underneath. So I highly recommend, if you're someone who is interested in technical writing, maybe not super detailed technical writing, but maybe translating a mod developer's own website and kind of copying that information onto the wiki so that it's all in one place. I think the most important part about the consolemods.org wiki is that it is open source. It is actually under the Creative Commons attribution license. So anything that is written in here is essentially open source. The idea being that this is a repository for this information to live kind of forever. The idea is that this is an iterative process. This wiki is going to gain more articles and more detailed articles over time as more people contribute to it. I'm sure there's much more information about this console mods wiki that I'm leaving out. If you have any feedback, you can reach out to Derf on social media. I'll leave a link on how to contact them in the description. That's it for this week. If you want to suggest a news story to me, follow me on Twitter or join the Discord. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.